Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on SERDP funding opportunities. My name is Stephanie Lawless, and I will be moderating today's session. We will get started in a few moments. While we wait for others to log on, I would like to cover a few logistical items. Today's broadcast will be listen only. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. You may submit questions by using the chat box on the left-hand portion of the screen. You do not need to wait until the Q&A period to submit your questions. In fact, we encourage you to submit them in advance of that session. The phone lines will remain listen only throughout the presentation, so we will not be taking any questions verbally. We will not be able to answer questions about specific proposal ideas or technologies during this webinar. Please note that both the audio and the presentation of today's session will be archived on our solicitation webpage in case you would like to refer to them in the future. Today's speakers are Dr. Herb Nelson, the Acting Executive Director of SERDP, and Dr. Andrea Leeson, the Deputy Director of SERDP and Environmental Restoration Program Manager. Before I turn it over to Herb and Andrea, I remind phone participants that this is a listen-only session, and to submit questions, please use the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Herb?
Thank you, Stephanie. We're happy to welcome you all to the webinar today. This is always an exciting time for us because it means we have new statements of need out, and there's a lot of, we're looking forward to a lot of good proposals and funding some good projects after that. So just to start and remind you all, or those of you that are new to us, we really are two companion programs. The Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program on the left, and that's the subject of today's webinar. And then we have the program that is, I said, a companion program, the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, which is a demonstration validation program. So the SERDP, the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, was established by Congress in the early 90s. It's a partnership between DOD, the Department of Energy, DOE, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. One of the unique aspects of SERDP is that we are able to support research all the way from basic research to advanced development. So depending on where the need is and what questions need to be answered at what stage of the research process, we can support research of that variety. And then, of course, our charter is to work on high-priority environmental science and technology areas that are of DOD interest. So this is a little diagram, sort of a flow diagram of how DOD, the Department of Defense, looks at all R&D processes. We start with requirements from the services. That leads to calls for basic and applied research and even to advanced development. As I said earlier, that's what SERDP is responsible for. And then as we go past advanced development, we would move to demonstration validation, and that's the companion program, ESDCP. All of this is under the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installations, and Environment. So there are two sets of drivers that inform the work, inform the statements of need and the work that we do in SERDP or aim towards solving. The first of these is sustainability of ranges, facilities, and operations of the Department of Defense. You can see on this slide that there are a lot of examples. We have a lot of threatened and endangered species responsibilities in the department. There's toxic air emissions and dust from training and operations, noise generated by DOD operations. We have forward operating bases that need to work in a sustainable manner, et cetera. The other driver is reduction of current and future liabilities from contamination. So as you see on the left side of this slide, we do contamination from past practices, lots of groundwater, soils, and sediment contamination. We have a large UXO liability both on land and underwater. And of course, emerging contaminants are always being found that we have to take care of. And then on the right-hand side of this slide is to try to do better, do smarter work now and carry out the depot and maintenance operations of the Department of Defense without generating these contaminations. So SERDP is divided into 4 program areas for management purposes. There's environmental restoration on the top right, which is the traditional chemical cleanup portion of the work. There's munitions response on the bottom right, which is mostly focused on underwater unexploded ordnance these days. Resource conservation and resiliency is all of the natural resources and some built infrastructure issues that concern the department. And then finally, in the upper left, weapon systems and platforms area, which is concerned with the depots, industrial maintenance bases, explosives, all of the reduction of hazardous materials that we're trying to get into the DoD stream. So this is a very brief summary, or a very brief overview, I guess is a better word, of how the program proceeds. We obviously receive environmental requirements from the services, from other Department of Defense activities. This all comes through our SERDP technical committees, which are composed of representatives of the individual services. We have DOE and EPA representation on these also. They helped us craft the statement of need, which I presume everyone on this webinar has looked at because you are listening to this webinar. That leads to a solicitation. Hopefully good proposals will flow from that, which focus back to our technical committee to help us rank them. And the technical committee also helps us monitor and manage funded projects. So we refer to our solicitations as statements of need, and there are two kinds of those. They're on the top, the most common, the core statements of need. So these are an issue that is of immediate or looming need for the Department of Defense. We expect to have multiple awards for each of these statements of need. Most proposals are multi-year, although there are some limited scope proposals that are $200K, 1-year duration. This is announced through both a broad agency announcement, for which universities, industry, and other non-governmental organizations can apply, and then a federal call for proposals, which DoD and other federal agencies can respond to. And then there's a second program for which we have one call this year, so-called SERDP Exploratory Development, or SEED projects. These are limited time and limited money, $200,000 or less, approximately 1-year work. And they are meant to be innovative, high-risk, and high-payoff work that can turn into a core proposal if they are successful. And for this, it's both a BAA and a federal call. So here is a little not animated version of our core solicitation process. So you can see we have both a broad agency announcement and a federal call for proposals. Those lead to pre-proposals, and that's really what we're talking about today. Pre-proposals are subject to staff review with help from our technical committees. We really try to answer the question, if done as well as possible, could this pre-proposal turn into a competitive proposal? We certainly don't want to waste your time if you've gone the wrong way or not understood what we're asking for. Then we invite full proposals. Full proposals go through a 2-step review. First step is peer review, which assures scientific merit. And the second step is ranking by the technical committees, those that pass the peer review gate, and that responds to DoD relevance. And then, depending on the budgets and availability, projects are selected and then go to our scientific advisory board for approval. So here are the relevant dates for this year's solicitation. SERDP is a relatively long and drawn-out process, as you saw in that slide before. So pre-proposals will be due the 4th of January in the middle of the afternoon Eastern Time. The call came out at the end of October. Pre-proposals will be requested. This first round of screening will be done through the month of January, and early February we'll notify those who request a full proposal. Full proposals will be due March the 6th in the middle of the afternoon Eastern Time. Selection notifications will go out in July or August, so that means that gives us time to do peer review and this ranking by the technical committees. Selected projects, the last step is approval by a scientific advisory board, so those presentations will be in September or October. We'll try to get projects started as quickly as we can, depending upon the length of the contracting process. Project initiation, the goal is by spring of 2019. SEED is a little bit more relaxed schedule since there are no pre-proposals for SEED. We received the proposals on March the 6th. Then those just go into the normal approval cycle by the technical committees. They are not sent, however, to peer review. Peer review tends to bias against the high-risk proposals, so we do not peer review these. And then the same thing, selection notices in July or August and project initiation in the spring of 19. So this is a little bit of information to let you gauge the competitiveness of the program or what the sort of return on investment for your time is going to be. These are the 18 statistics. You can see that a little more than 1 in 8 pre-proposals turn into a selected project, and about 35 or 40% of full proposals turn into a selected project. So I often say in round numbers, 1 in 3 pre-proposals is asked for a full proposal, 1 in 3 full proposals is selected, and you can see in 18 of the numbers are a little bit higher than that, but this is certainly in line with the normal sort of situation. So here are the criteria for selecting a core proposal. There's clearly the first pass-fail gate is this relevant to the statement of need? And I think you should always keep that in mind when you're crafting a pre-proposal. If you're really stretching to get to the statement of need, if you're not directly addressing the statement of need, it's not likely to pass this gate. It also has to be an appropriate level of maturity for SERDP. That means it's someplace in the continuum of basic research to advanced technology development. If it's a commercial product that just needs a demonstration, that's not a SERDP proposal, it's really an ESTCP proposal. Once the relevance and the correct level of maturity gate has been passed, then the decision is based on technical merit, which is overwhelmingly the most important of the factors, the personnel, the team that's been assembled to attack the problem, the cost, and mostly this is a cost reasonableness gate, and then there are minor considerations of transition plan, meaning how will this go on in the Department of Defense, and there's a small business participation score. The seed selection criteria are aligned but a little different, given that they are meant to be higher risk, higher payoff proposals. So there's clearly the relevance gate first, and then technical merit and transition potential are the two deciding factors for seed projects. So often people say, what makes a competitive proposal? And I think most people that have written proposals are not going to be surprised on anything on this list. The first bullet just reiterates something I said earlier. The pre-proposal must clearly address the statement of need. If you find yourself stretching to get to the statement of need, you might not be spending your time well. The proposal needs to also demonstrate an understanding of the state of the science, what's been done in the area, how what's been done informs the current proposal. We are always looking for hypothesis-driven work, and clearly you want to focus on the technical approach, as that is the most important of the evaluation factors. So now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Andrea Leeson, who's going to talk to you about the particular statements of need, and then I'll be back at the end to sum up.
Okay, thanks, Herb. So what I will do is walk through the statements of need, and this year we have 13 core statements of need, as well as 1 seed. And I also wanted to mention that in each of these statements of need, you'll find the full description of the statement of need on our website under the solicitation website. And at the end of each statement of need, you'll find a point of contact, which is the program manager generally for that area. If you have detailed questions about the statement of need, you should direct your questions to the program manager. We won't be able to go into a tremendous amount of technical detail on each of these, and those kind of questions are best answered by the program manager. So our first 4 statement of needs we'll talk about are under the environmental restoration program area, and the first 2 statements of need arose out of a strategic workshop we held earlier this year on per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. The strategic workshop identified a number of research needs, and so we have released 2 core statement of needs addressing some of these. The first statement of need is on ecological risk characterization of PFASs in the subsurface, covering bioavailability, bioaccumulation, and biomagnification. And what we're trying to do is improve our understanding of these processes, as you can see from the 3 sub-objectives that are listed there on this statement of need. Now, the proposals that are submitted do not have to necessarily address every one of these sub-objectives. You can focus on a particular one rather than all, and in fact, that probably is the most practical way to structure a proposal. At the bottom of this slide, you will see a link to the workshop report that we released earlier this year. It really is important that you take a look at this workshop report if you intend to solicit to this statement of need. There is more detail in that workshop report about the discussions that we had at the workshop. The next statement of need, also that arose out of this PFAS workshop, was on development of standardized analytical environmental sampling methods for PFASs in the subsurface. This was a very obvious
and large data need that was identified during the workshop. You can see there are a number of different sub-objectives listed for this statement of need. And again, we do not expect you to address all of these sub-objectives in a proposal. And again, please look at the bottom of that page. It really is critical that you take a look at the workshop report if you intend to submit a proposal to this statement of need. Our next two statement of needs under the Environmental Restoration Program area also came from a workshop, but this is from a workshop in 2015 that was addressing the issue of munitions constituents and really the whole life cycle of the munitions constituents. We have previously released statements of need addressing this, but there were still some data needs from this workshop that we felt needed to be addressed. This first one is concerning innovative treatment options to mitigate munitions constituent transport on DoD testing and training ranges. So this is really looking at field methods to deal with our munitions constituents that we must use in our training ranges, and how can we prevent those constituents from migrating off base and into surface and groundwaters. Again, at the bottom of this statement of need, you'll see the link for the workshop report. It is a very good idea to take a look at that before you submit a proposal to this statement of need. Our next statement of need, also that arose out of this workshop, is cost-effective options for treatment of waste from munitions constituents manufacturing. So here we're going into farther upstream in the life cycle of these munitions to actually deal with the wastewater. And this could be waste from both the legacy munitions constituents as well as the insensitive high explosives that are now being put into use. And I should have mentioned both in this statement of need as well as the previous one, again, you do not need to address all of the sub-objectives that are listed there. You can focus on just one, but again, as with the previous statement of need, please take a look at that workshop report before putting together your proposal. Our next two statement of needs fall under the Resource Conservation and Resiliency Program area. The first one is on wildland fire research to improve military land use efficiency. And what we're looking at is to improve our understanding of ignition patterns, self-organization of convective structures, and near-fire smoke plume development for the purposes of improving our management of fire for military land use. If you go to the statement of need, you'll see that we reference the fire science strategy that was developed in 2014. And again, we really encourage you to take a look at that, to look at both the strategy as well as a listing of ongoing and complete projects that we've funded under this area. Our next statement of need under Resource Conservation and Resiliency is titled Conservation Tools to Support DoD Training Land Use. And what we're looking at here is soliciting proposals to support the maturation of environmental DNA. And we're looking at that from fundamental to applied research levels, with the anticipation that a future tool in conservation, whether in terrestrial, aquatic, or marine ecosystems, could be developed that's relevant to DoD lands. Again, in this area, we have some work that's already had been supported under this program area, so please go to our website, take a look at that other research that we funded before putting your proposal together so that you're familiar with the sort of work we've already funded. Our next 5 statement of needs are on the Weapons System and Platforms program area. The first one is on aircraft engine noise reduction technology, and we're simply looking there to optimize our technologies for legacy commercial engines on military fighter aircraft so that we can achieve substantial engine exhaust noise reductions. What we're really looking for there is that the proposal should look to facilitate an approach to mature and test technologies that can reduce fighter aircraft engine noise, maintain operational performance, as well as improve upon prior efforts to alter the engine exhaust flow. Our next statement of need under this area is predictive corrosion models to mitigate environmental hazards. And what we want to do is develop models that characterize and predict the cumulative damage state of a military platform's coding system. There's a number of different impacts that we're interested in looking at, and they're listed here, including wind and rain erosion, vibrational fatigue, relative humidity, and a number of others there that are listed. The next statement of need under this program area is on additive manufacturing of gun propellants with reduced environmental impact. And what we want to do here is investigate the additive manufacturing approaches to propellant design, formulation, and LAP operations. We have a number of sub-objectives under this statement of need also for you to take a look at before finalizing your proposal. The next statement of need under this area is novel pyrotechnics that reduce environmental impact. And we want to solicit proposals to develop next-generation pyrotechnic formulations and manufacturing processes so that we can significantly reduce life cycle impacts to the environment. Potentials for consideration are to look at alternative non-combustion methods of enhancing the colors and smoke generation. We want to look at possibly methods of enhancing the color while reducing the size and weight of the item. We also want to look at multi-purpose color tunable formulations where a single flare could be used. And then finally, possibly novel engineering or manufacturing processes and improvements. The final statement of need under this program area is on multifunctional fibers and textiles for warfighter integrated protection. And what we're looking here is investigating these multifunctional and novel alternative technology fibers, fiber blends, textiles, impregnated fabrics, and processing techniques to reduce life cycle impacts. At this point then, we'll go over to the munitions statements of need, and I'll turn that back to Herb to discuss those statements of need specifically.
Okie doke, so I'll finish up, as Andrea said, by talking the last two statements of need, and a seed statement, which are in the munitions response area. The first is titled The Detection, Classification, and Remediation of Military Munitions Underwater. As I said in the introduction, the munitions response area is mostly focused on underwater munitions, although you'll see a statement of need coming up that's not. And so really this is a very broad call looking for technologies that can work to accomplish the title in up to 35 meters of water, although many of the places where technologies are needed are much shallower than that, something down to 5 meters. And we really are looking for particularly topics, proposals in the areas of characteristics of munitions underwater, what their environment is, methods for doing wide area and detailed surveys, and cost-effective recovery and disposal. We continuously are searching for this cost-effective recovery and disposal proposals, and we don't really get many fundable ones. So if you have some good ideas there, we're really looking for them. There's also a seed statement of need with virtually the same technical requirements, looking for more out-of-the-box, more high-risk topics. And then the final statement of need we're going to talk about today is land-based, modeling predictions of munitions penetration in a variety of soils. We have a good idea how deeply our sensors can detect unexploded ordnance on a land site. What we don't have is a very good predictive models for how deeply they could have gotten when they were used in training in World War II or Korean War training. So we'd really like, in the last bullet on this slide says, to develop a simple parameterized model that can give us a range of depths that we would expect and allow to both do risk mitigation, risk planning, and cleanup planning. Sorry about that. And then on to our final slide, remind everyone that we've been fortunate to be able to get approval to start again the SERDP Symposium, which we held for many, many years. And we've taken a 5-year break, but we're now back. It's in 2 weeks in the Washington Hilton in Washington, D.C. You can see, near DuPont Circle, you can see down at the bottom of this slide is the link, and it just showed up in the participant feedback box. So if you have time and would like to come out and see what SERDP and ESTCP are doing, please check us out. And now I think we're on to the question period. We have had a number of questions have come in. We will take turns addressing them. So we certainly have plenty of time now. We always try to talk about a half an hour. See, we went a little bit shorter than that to leave plenty of time for questions.
Thank you, Herb. Our first question is, what are typical funding levels and durations for SERDP projects?
So this is a hardy perennial question. There's really no typical, but I'll talk for a couple of 5 sentences here and sort of try to cover that. There is a median number, I would say, for a core proposal is a 3-year project length with something like $300,000 to $350,000 per year. But there's a pretty wide variance on that. We support a number of single investigator with their graduate student or postdoc projects, which are more like $200K a year, and we support a few much larger big team projects that are approaching $1 million a year. So that sort of spans the range. What we would really like you to do is write down what it takes to solve the problem that you pose and then price it appropriately.
Are there U.S. citizenship requirements for SERDP investigators or co-performers?
That is not a requirement in terms of having U.S. citizenship. We do have wide flexibility there.
What is the main difference between the seed solicitation and the limited scope section of each statement of need?
So although it seems like not much, there's actually quite a bit of a difference. The seed is really meant to be a high risk, high payoff. So a standard idea that just takes close to a year and $200,000 is really not appropriate to seed. We think of the limited scopes more along these lines. You don't have enough data right now to fairly cost out and plan a full core project. So a limited scope might be thought of as a stage 1 of a project where you gather enough data that you can really complete the proposal for a full project. The seed, though, we want to focus on the innovativeness of the effort.
Can SERDP provide or coordinate samples of explosive materials such as TNT and RDX for investigation?
We do not coordinate that. If you're looking at, I guess that's a two-part question. If you're looking at samples from actual contaminated soils, we can assist you there in terms of putting you in touch with points of contact at different military bases that may be able to provide you with contaminated soils. That we can help you with. If it's simply to get the pure compounds themselves, that's something you'll have to look into, and you also have to make sure your organization has the appropriate permits to be able to receive such materials. That is essential.
What is the percentage of pre-proposals submitted that are requested as full proposals?
So that's also a question that doesn't have a 2-word answer. Program-wide, it's about 1 in 3 pre-proposals request a full proposal. It varies widely by program area, though. Some of the program areas can receive more than 100 pre-proposals, and it really would not be feasible to turn up enough peer reviewers to do 1/3 of those full proposals. So the exact answer will depend on which program area you're asking about.
Is cost sharing a requirement for SERDP projects?
It is not a requirement. We certainly view that favorably if that is a possibility, but it is not a requirement for the proposals.
Can multiple proposals be submitted by the same organization?
Yes. There's no limit on the number of proposals by the same organization or by the same PI for that matter. Clearly addressing different statements of need or radically different ideas in the same statement of need is really a requirement.
Can proposals submitted in previous years but not funded be submitted again this year?
They certainly could be submitted again this year, but you must be very careful that the topic of your proposal is relevant to the statement of needs that were released this year.
Are there requirements for pre-proposals, such as format, page numbers, etc.?
Yes, the requirements are on the website. If you go to the SERDP funding opportunities click yourself through the website, you'll see instructions for preparing pre-proposals.
For ER Statement of Need 19-C1, entitled Ecological Risk Characterization of Per- and Polyfluoroalkyl Substances in the Subsurface, Bioavailability, Bioaccumulation, and Biomagnification, can proposals be focused on organisms across freshwater, estuarine, or marine systems?
We did not specify that in the Statement of Need. Please take a look at the workshop report to see more discussion about that. However, I could say that the bigger need is in freshwater and estuarine. but we did not limit the SON to any of those systems.
Is the symposium hosted by DoD? That is, attendees are approved under one DoD-hosted conference approval?
Yeah, so this is a little bit off topic, but I thought we could address it quickly. Yes, the attendees are approved under one DoD-hosted conference approval. If you go to the symposium site, you'll see a place where you can request a copy of that approval letter.
Where are the workshop reports posted on the SERDP website?
You can get to them a couple of ways. The links for the relevant workshop reports are embedded in the statements of needs that, from which they were drawn. Or you can go to the website, and under conferences and symposia, you can also find descriptions of the workshops there, and then the workshop report is linked in those workshop descriptions.
What is the pre-proposal requirement for limited scope proposals? And do the limited scope proposals go through peer review or just internal SERDP technical review?
Okay, so that's good that that's really two questions we combined, but they really address the same thing. So the pre-proposal requirements are the same for limited scope proposals because they go through the same approval process. After request for a full proposal, they go out for peer review, limited scopes also, and then are ranked by the technical committees.
How important is it that field components of projects take place on DoD properties, or can field work take place on non-DoD properties if there is a clear relevance to the statement of need?
Under SERDP, typically field work can take place on non-DoD properties if there is a clear relevance to both the statement of need as well as to the DoD. There may be cases where we would much prefer it to be on a DoD property, but if your proposal were selected for funding, we would work with you on that.
Will these slides be available?
So the slides will be posted, and I think an audio of the things, so you can hear all our stumbles as we read you the slides, will be posted on the SERDP and ESCCB website.
Where are the descriptions of previously funded proposals on the website?
If you go to our website, you will see a link for our program area descriptions, and if you go into there, you'll see the various sub-focus areas of each of the program areas, and you can look there for projects that were selected under particular areas. You can also do a search on the website for key topic areas and find them that way. There's a number of ways to find the previously funded projects. How turbid or clear is the water at the sites are you anticipating for the underwater detection of munitions?
Well, it's a very wide range. There are sites such as off in islands in the Pacific or islands in the Caribbean where the water is crystal clear, and there are sites in things like San Diego Bay or in the Chesapeake Bay where the water is very turbid. So thinking in terms of attenuation lengths, it ranges from many, many meters to not many centimeters.
Can we get any feedback from SERDP if our pre-proposal or proposal is not funded?
So generally on the pre-proposal stage, we do not give feedback. That's simply a labor hour limitation. We're a pretty small office, and we just don't have the staff time available. If we do ask for your proposal, a full proposal, then it goes through peer review, and we do provide the peer review comments to everyone if their proposal is not funded.
Are proposals submitted to the federal call for proposals reviewed differently than those submitted to the BAA?
No, they are not. And some years ago, there was one fewer steps in the federal call, but that turned out to disadvantage federal proposers, so we've now aligned it, and they're handled exactly the same.
Are there limits in terms of numbers of proposals that will be funded per statement of need or program area?
We really don't have any predetermined limit in terms of the number of proposals that we fund per statement of need or program area. It's all based on technical merit. Certainly we have funding limits as a whole, but we will assess how that funding is divvied up based more on technical merit.
Can funding be used for international partners or collaborators?
Yes, it is not at all unusual to have an international collaborator, partner, nor to have an international PI. So I think probably North Korea would not be acceptable, but other than that, I think we're in okay shape.
Is SERDP accepting proposals in the area of microgrids and or energy management this year?
No, and in fact, in no year. So SERDP, the Research and Development Program, does not have an energy program area. The Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, ESTCP, has an energy program area who does accept proposals in those areas that you're asking about. That call will be posted in early January. ESTCP is a quicker approval process because it doesn't have the peer review, so we have people have a longer time to get their proposals together. So look back at the site, please, right after the first of the calendar year, and you'll find the calls there for microgrids and energy management.
This is the last more general question that we have received. There are other questions which are more specific to a statement of need or technology. For those questions, we ask that you contact the program manager for that specific area. Thank you for attending the webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation and audio will be archived for future reference on the SERDP solicitation webpage. This concludes today's webcast.